today we're taking a closer look at two different pale neutrals. Tighten Buff, that's this almondy color, and N8 Neutral Gray, which is, of course, the gray color. Now, both of these fit at about value 8 on the neutral scale. So this is a value finder. 1 is pure black, and 10 is pure white. So N8 is specially made so that it fits pretty much exactly at value 8. So it's 2 steps darker, we'll say, in value than white, pure white. And Tighten Buff is also very similar. It's at about value 8 as well. So these two are really interesting to take a look at next to each other, see how they work when you mix them with different colors, and see how they work in a painting. So let's talk about Tighten Buff first. So both of these are made by Golden. This Tighten Buff is very warm, obviously very pale neutral because it's quite pale in the value scale. Kind of a ivory or almond hue. And I've used it a lot as a background color when you just want kind of a warm, neutral, fairly solid color. I've also used it fairly extensively as a mixing color. When you have a light hitting a surface, it can be really nice just to warm it up a little bit. And the pigment used in Tighten Buff is PW6:1, which is a type of titanium dioxide with just a little bit of iron in it to give it a bit of warmth. And it's quite opaque. Now let's talk about N8 Neutral Gray. This is also a golden color. Golden has an entire line that fits into each of the values. So you can buy any of the neutral grays at any value that you would like, which is really convenient. This is a mix of pigments. So there's PW6, so again, titanium white, PBK9, which is bone black, and PBR7, which is a brown iron oxide. So with either of these, you probably can get away with not purchasing this, but mixing it. So with N8 Neutral Gray, you can just buy what it says on the packaging for the mix of pigments. With Tighten Buff, you could use titanium white and something that has a bit of an iron. So there's iron oxides, various colors to get something, somewhat similar. Now I'm going to start with some mixing tests. So the colors that I used to mix with these two different yellows, a warm and a cool, so Hansa Yellow Lemon and Cad Free Yellow Medium. I've got Cadmium Free Red Medium, Quin Magenta. Some of these tubes are getting a little bit empty and twisted up, but they still work. Phthalo Blue Green shade, Ultramarine Blue, and then I included 3 different secondaries: Dioxazine Purple, Sap Green Hue, and Fat Orange. And then I used some titanium white to just show a bit of a lighter shade. So let me just move this all out of the way. Now let's take a look at the mixing sheet that I created this morning. So Tighten Buff up here, and Neutral Gray here. So let's talk about Tighten Buff first. So Tighten Buff, this is straight out of the tube, and it's already quite pale. Again, we've talked about where it sits on the value scale, so that's not surprising. And I did add a little bit more and more titanium white just to see what we could get. I got 4 different shades, but to be honest, there's barely a difference between all these shades, or all these values. So, you can probably realistically get a couple levels out of it. And it's very warm, but like a grayed out warm. So while it does add some warmth, it isn't, adding warmth like you would with yellow. So now let's take a look at how it mixes with some really common colors. So just so you understand how this mixing sheet works. So this first column is adding just a little bit of the Tighten Buff and a lot of the original color. And then I add a bit of white just to see, sometimes that helps reveal a bit of what color you're actually dealing with. And then this third column is a lot of the Tighten Buff and just a little bit of the mixing color, and then again adding a bit more white. So let's talk about the yellows first. So because Tighten Buff is a warm neutral, you're not going to get dramatic changes when you add yellow. Really, the Hansa Yellow Lemon just kind of muddies it up, kind of dirties it up a little bit, brings down that really electric lemon yellow, which is, really handy. Cad-free Yellow Medium, again, just kind of neutralizes it a little bit. And you're not getting dramatic changes at all when you add the white, because yellow tends to be a pretty light value as it is. So you're dealing with, light value for the mixing color, light value for the Titan Buff, adding a bit of white. You're not getting dramatic changes. Okay, let's take a look at the two reds. So Cad-free Red Medium, again, just kind of neutralizes the color, gives it, maybe a touch of warmth, brings it kind of more towards like a corally color when you add just a little bit of the Titan Buff, which is really nice. I really, really like it. This pale pastel color. In fact, I like all the red pastel colors. And magenta, the Quin Magenta, just kind of neutralizes it a bit. Quin Magenta and Cad-free Red Medium, these two colors can be very intense, so it's nice to just, bring it down a notch. Okay, let's take a look at the blues. So because Titan Buff is a warm neutral, I was like, maybe, will we see a little bit of green happening? In the ultramarine blue, you don't really see that. And that's because ultramarine blue leans a little bit red. And so it just kind of neutralizes the blue. But you can see it in the phthalo blue green, where, especially where you add a lot of the Titan Buff, you can see it definitely pulls it greener. And that's just because, because this leans green and this leans a little warm. So a little bit, I don't want to say yellow, but a little bit kind of that yellow warmth. It does make it a bit greener. So this would be handy for creating some ocean colors for sure. Dioxazine purple. So purple and yellow are opposite complementary colors. So it really definitely muddies down the purple. You can see it most dramatically in the Titan Buff mix. And then, this just definitely feels like a purple, but not as electric as a dioxazine purple straight out of the tube. So that would definitely be handy. Sap green, because sap green already has kind of a olivey warmth to it already, you're really just, you're not getting dramatic changes out of it. And again, fat orange, it's a reddish orange. So, again, just not quite as electric. So Titan Buff definitely brings overall just neutralizing and just bringing down some of the intensity. Now let's talk about N8 neutral gray. So again, straight out of the tube, pretty light color. I added, white increasingly. And again, you don't get dramatic differences in value because, you don't have a whole lot of space to move, but you can lighten it a bit. And you can definitely see that I always think of gray as kind of a cool color, even though it's theoretically neutral. When you put it beside Titan Buff, it's definitely going to seem cool. But if you put it against a blue, it's going to seem a little bit warm. So just be aware of that as we discuss. Be aware of that concept as we discuss how these colors kind of compare. So again, I can kind of consider it cool, especially in comparison to Titan Buff. Let's look at the yellows first. So what's interesting is the Hansa Yellow Lemon almost turns, just steering a little bit into the green, just pulling it a little bit in there, and that's because of the more blue that's in the neutral gray than there would be in the Titan Buff. So if you want to, definitely neutralize this, electric yellow and just start pulling it into the green, this neutral gray could really help with that. The Cad-free Yellow Medium, really just muddying it down. Does pull it a little bit green as well. You can see just starting on the olivey kind of area, but still definitely a yellow. The reds, I do, just like with the Titan Buff, I also really like how these reds have neutralized with the neutral gray. The Cad-free Red Medium, it doesn't have, kind of this corally lean. A lot of these I find, other than maybe the yellows, a lot of them I find really just kind of seem like the same color, but more neutral. So I find that with the Cad Red, just, notch down the intensity. But you do notice, or at least I notice, that this grayed out red it's almost kind of feeling a little bit purple over here where you add a lot of the neutral gray and just a little bit of the red. Quin Magenta, you can see that purplish here as well in the one that is more neutral gray. Whereas the Quin Magenta with just a little bit of the neutral gray, just, nice and toned down. The blues, you don't have that same kind of pulling to the green like there was with the Titan Buff mixes. But, just like a nice neutralization. Again, I don't think it's as intense of a neutralization as with the Titan Buff. But, like a lot of the other colors, it's like the neutral gray just kind of keeps it the same color, just a little bit less intense. So just a little bit neutral. The dioxazine purple, this is neutralizing, but it doesn't have the same kind of neutralization feel as I think the Titan Buff does. It's almost like it's a bit, paler, which is no surprise because of the value of the N8 neutral gray, but it still feels like purple. Whereas here you can see, it's becoming a bit more brown, whereas this is maybe going more central in the color wheel. Sap green hue. I don't find the mix dramatically different than the Titan Buff, and I think that's because there's already so much kind of yellow in the sap green hue. So it's still very olivey, just neutralized. And again, that orange, somewhat similar, but definitely a nicer kind of grade orange than I think than the Titan Buff. And that's because there's, a bit more blue. Blue and orange are opposite on the color wheel, so you're definitely getting something that's nicely grayed out with this. So I want to show you, I did a couple quick little paintings using both. So I just decided to do an egg because eggs are fairly white, so I thought I could just, add some colors. It's not a realistic egg, obviously, because of the unusual colors. I wouldn't want to eat an egg that looks like these colors, but it does give you an idea of if you're using these two colors, is there a dramatic difference? And so this top one is Titan Buff. This bottom one is N8 neutral gray. And I do see some differences, but I think they're extremely mild. I did add a bit more kind of strong Titan Buff and a little bit of the yellow up here, which kind of gives it a warmth. Whereas here, it worked well with a lot of the blues. But to be honest, if I asked somebody if they could tell a difference really between these two paintings, most people probably would never be able to identify, oh, well, you used a different kind of mixing neutral. Because they don't look dramatically different. I mean, there's some differences, obviously, because they're two different paintings, but really, like, the colors here and here, I mean, yes, I, made a bit of a different choice with a little bit, but really, it's not like, I don't feel like one is leaning warmer, like, this doesn't feel that much warmer than that, and that, it doesn't feel warmer than that. And it does depend, like, how much blue I used. Like, I used a lot more blue here than I did here. But again, like, it just doesn't seem like that it makes that much of a difference. Now, I do think that there's room for probably one of these on a lot of people's palettes. And, I tend to prefer kind of cooler colors, so I would probably pick N8 neutral gray. But if you prefer warmer colors, go with the Titan Buff. But really, either one will work. And I think Titan Buff, I could really easily recreate it with like a touch of yellow ochre with titanium white. So I don't think that there's room for it in the future on my palette. And as you can see, it's almost empty. And I really wanted to get this demonstration done before I used it all up, because I actually don't want to buy it again, at least not for a long time. But I think I will, this is a pretty new tube of N8 neutral gray. I will stick with this one at least, for quite some time, because I do think there is room to have something that is a neutralizing color or neutralizing almost white. So it's handy to not always use white as your, to create your pastels. Now, both of these have a lot of titanium white, so you can absolutely go without it, but it's just super handy. And it's a really quick shortcut on your palette to create something that isn't just a pale version, but a little bit of a neutralized version, because these colors that happen when you're mixing, they're not as intense as if you're just adding white. And I'm going to show you the previous page. And here was when I did my titanium white and zinc white comparison. So it's handy to see. You can see these are still pretty intense colors when you've added in the titanium white, but you compare it to this and the colors are a lot more soothing. So I think it's a really interesting comparison. I actually didn't necessarily expect it. I thought, it would be clear that Titan Buff really just shifts your whole painting to be warm, whereas neutral gray shifts your whole painting to be cool. And I never really found that, but I will definitely continue with one of these. And to be honest, I don't even think it really matters. So yeah, I hope that was really helpful, and see you in the next one.